Hello everybody, you're very welcome, good evening, welcome back to Chuck's Chats and a new kind of sideline development where we're having some fireside chats over pints in the President's Bar with a number of club grandees. I do feel a little bit like Tommy Tiernan on a show when somebody steps into the studio and you can see him looking going, oh my god, I have no idea who this is. So I'll be making some of it up, but bear with me. We're going to start this evening with Louis McGee. We're going to hear Louis' story. Louis is a doyen at Bective, club trustee. You're akin to the father of Bective. Louis, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Delighted to be here.
So you joined in 1965. That's 1 year less than I'm on this planet,
Yeah.
Louis.
Well, I suppose I used to come down here when I was very young, 8, 9, 10, and just be up on the terraces watching all the greats of Bective, Mick Cully and Brian Rigney, Frank O'Rourke, Fergie Keogh, Jerry Hardy. I was only a kid watching them and I just loved coming down here. Mm-hmm. Now I knew the family background, obviously, and I was, time went on. 65, I joined here as a schoolboy.
Okay.
And then, but really, 1968, left school, finished school, and came down here in August for the training session, 18 years of age. And the first person I met was Phil Murphy.
Okay.
And Phil brought me into the dressing room, introduced me. I remember him introduced me to Frank O'Rourke, Brian Rigney.
Probably slipped you some wine guns, Phil.
Yeah, I mean, he was fantastic. And we remained very close friends, mm-hmm. right through to his passing. But that was the start. And I had an absolutely wonderful year, my first year. It was special in many ways. It got my father back down here, the major, because he hadn't been down that much. My mother hadn't been well and he just wasn't around, so now he was back. And I played on a third team that won every match during the season except the last 2 matches, which were finals. And John Broderick was captain, but it was an extraordinary side. It contained the likes of Brian Rigney, who had played for Leinster, final Irish trialist, Frank O'Rourke, Leinster, final Irish trialist, and here they were on the thirds in Bective. And the discipline was fabulous. We trained hard, we had a very good side. You know, throughout the season many different players came in, like Des McDonald, but I think the pièce de résistance on the team was definitely the scrum half, who was the one and only Brian Muscles Conway.
Muscles.
And Muscles was sending out bullet-like passes at that stage, and don't let anyone think otherwise.
Okay. So I was looking at this. There's kind of a symmetry in your rugby life. You're born and raised in Clyde Road, down to Donnybrook, which is about 1 kilometre away.
Yeah.
You were teaching up in Marion, which is another kilometre away, and eventually you ended up in the IRFU, which is on the same road. So your whole life is encapsulated in nearly a 1 kilometre triangle in around Donnybrook and Ballsbridge.
It's true. I mean, living where I was, the family connection here, Marion College being so close, I went to school there, mm-hmm. and then went on to college, and then got a phone call, would I be interested in going back to teach there, do my HDip there, and I was delighted to, and I was thrilled to do it, and happy days.
So for a guy, I suppose, there's a generation, are you 4th generation, 3rd generation, McGee? Fifth.
Well, I'm the third.
You're the third, but we're on to the 5th now.
We're on to the 5th now.
With David Skid, sorry.
Well, with Louis, who's helping coach the first team, his young lad Dara now makes up the 5th, and then David's 2 lads, James and Louis. Hopefully they'll be playing here. Louis won his junior cup medal with Blackrock last year.
I saw that.
And he comes down to all the matches here, which is great. That. So
let's hope he brings
fingers crossed.
Let's hope he brings his strength. So if you were with us, and was it 68? You said you played your first games here.
My first game, yes, on the thirds, and I played on the thirds that season, and I also got a couple of matches on the first.
Okay.
Which was a fantastic experience because I remember being out in UCD. I was studying science in UCD. Saturday morning, one of the men out there behind the desk knew me and he said, "There's somebody looking for you on the call here, urgent call." It was Paddy O'Donoghue. Paddy wanted me down in Merrion Road to sub for the first. So I ended up in the second row with the Great Wigs.
The Great Wigs.
I was just 19 at the time.
We'll come to the Great
yeah,
Wigs.
so that was.
So you started at 19, you went on to 36, 37?
Yeah, I finished on the first team. Actually, I finished playing, well, officially, I finished in April 1986 in Lansdowne Road against Lansdowne.
Okay.
And in that season, I had been coaching the thirds, playing with the thirds.
You were, yeah.
You know, I'd finished playing.
Semi-retired.
Semi-retired. But all of a sudden, I got the call. There was an injury. And I was thrilled. And actually, I played well. I remember that day well because as I was coming out of the dressing room, I ran straight into Moss Keane, who was now a spectator. And I can't actually tell you what Moss said, but it was basically, what the so-and-so hell are you doing here?
The great Morris Ignatius.
But he put it in slightly flowery terms.
Yes.
But he was a great friend of mine. And
a great character. Great
character.
You know, thank God there was no social media around when Morris Ignatius was playing. I had the pleasure of going on a 24-hour bender as a young lad at the Rugby World Cup in '91 over in Scotland when Finlay Calder took the head off Jim Staples.
That's right, yeah.
And I ended up on a plane and on a bus into town with Con Houlihan, who was my hero in terms of journalists and his prose and his writing.
And a member here.
And then we met Morris Ignatius in the Caledonian Hotel, and we had, I can't tell you what happened, but it was memorable. So for a guy who played so long, you must have won a lot of pots and a lot of medals in this club.
No, in fact, it's extraordinary. That first season set a pattern because we lost the two finals by 3 points each to Lansdowne and Terenure, which was a terrible pity because the team, it was a great team to play on. And I still think it was the best year I ever had in rugby when I look back. Then playing with the first, I played in the first Leinster League final, the very first with Bective against Wanderers. Wanderers beat us. Cup final against St Mary's, a very, very good St Mary's side, and they just beat us in Lansdowne Road in April '74. Following December, I think, or January, we lost to Blackrock in the Leinster League final again. So it was just that.
Are you a bit of a Jonah, Louis?
I must obviously be, you know. But I'd love to have won a medal. The only medal I did win was I didn't make it onto the pitch. It was in Edinburgh in 2015 when Ireland won the championship. I was president, and I was presented with a medal by the team, from the team. Which was
that crazy match where we were waiting on the England-France game.
We were up in the stand, chewing our nails, watching England and France, and watching France trying to
run the ball on their own line, when just kick it out and let us win
it. And it was a great day, a memorable day. Sweet Caroline was sung for ages.
Very well. There was no zombie, hadn't been invented yet. No. So you were captain of this club 3 times.
Yeah.
And you were the centenary captain in '81, '82 as well.
That was the other final. We got to play Wanderers in the cup final in the centenary year, and we drew, and then we lost in the replay. We had a good chance, you know, in that match. We knew going into a replay against them, it was going to be difficult because they had 8 internationals on the side.
Okay.
8. I have a picture at home. It's me jumping in the line out, and I can see across the Wanderers side, and I picked out 8 internationals. Okay. So that's the way it was.
Okay, and then you got, so I suppose moving on from that, you got 17 Leinster caps between 73 and 79.
Yeah, I've played against Fiji was my first cap. John Rayfield and myself were both picked, and John got injured. There was a bit of politics going on at the time. I think the RFU weren't too keen on John.
Because he was an English international.
I'm not sure. I know Rolly Meats, who was coaching Leinster, was very keen to have him, get him into the fold. He was replaced that day by a guy called Dave Barry, who was nearly as English as John was, as it turned out. But that was the start, and I had 17 caps. I mean, in a time when you played 3 interpros, we played Clonettley every year. And then I got the final trial in '79. I partnered Brendan Foley in the second row on the possibles against Morris Ignatius and Harry Steele.
Okay.
And
And a young up-and-coming Jim Glennon as well, was
Well,
he in the mix?
Jim, yeah, I mean, Jim's a great pal of mine. We played against each other an awful lot, and we played together a lot. We played for Leinster. I mean, we played together, and we had a couple of fine matches, particularly over in Wales, when eventually we managed. We were the first Irish team to beat a Welsh side over there in a long time. Leinster beat Clonettley. The year before, we were leading them, but the referee went on for 10 minutes.
He wasn't a South African referee.
He was a Welshman. And I met Phil Bennett about 15 years ago, and I reminded he remembered the match, and he remembered
the injustice.
He remembered dropping the goal, and he did. He was laughing. He said, "Yeah, he thought the match was never going to finish, but eventually he dropped the goal." They won that year. We won the following year. Okay. All in Wales, all in Stradley Park.
So unfortunately, that the final trial didn't lead. I mean,
no,
so Foley and Moss would have been coming off
yeah,
beating the All Blacks in '78.
Look, being honest about it, as a second row in those days, I'm not joking when I tell you my maximum weight was 14 3/4 stone.
But that was big in those days, do you know?
Well, I mean, when you're up against Moss, it wasn't, because Moss was well into the 17 stone. But that was the other side to that was that I loved line-out jumping. I was very good at it. I worked hard at it. It was a particular technique that I developed, and I knew it was a really good source of ball for the backs. And I was light enough, really,
that you could get up, because there's no lifters in those days.
I had a good spring, and I was able to get up off the ground.
Okay. So I suppose to close out your playing career, Bective tours. You must have. Did you do the Trinidad tour?
I went to Trinidad and Tobago in '76. We had a great tour there. It coincided, I think, with a bank strike here in Ireland. And
was Boff living in Trinidad at the time?
Boff was in Trinidad. Boff and the O'Farrell family did a huge amount of work in organising that, and we had a great trip there. It was probably. It was extraordinary. It was 3 weeks, really. We were there for 3 weeks because we went to Barbados as well. And when I think of it, like the matches, we played the matches in high humidity. I
played a game out there. I've been out there. Played a game out there.
We were totally unprepared for it. And of course, as soon as the matches were over, our view of rehydration was straight into the
Pelican.
Into the Pelican, into the pints.
Drink your body weight in pints.
And it was a great tour, and we had. Phil Murphy was there, so Phil.
All the lads played well.
Well, Phil hardly saw daylight, but he was as white coming back as he was going out. But it was the famous occasion when Phil always made friends wherever he went. Didn't matter. I mean, and the locals took to him.
He was a gentleman. He adopted me when I came in here.
In the bar in the Pelican, there was a group of them, and they went in one day early in the morning. And they didn't emerge until the next morning, and Phil came out and looked around and just said, "What time does it get dark around here?"
He thought it was the same day.
So he was like that, but he was great, and it was a great tour. It was by that stage now I had family, and of course I had met Susan down here in 1969.
Out in the hall,
out in the hall out here.
And you're 50 years married?
We're 50 years married this year. We know each other 54 years, and at that stage, it was time to put tours behind me and spend some time with the family.
And try and mature a little bit.
Susan encouraged me to keep going, to keep playing, and I did. And but I wanted to get back down here and do something like when I joined. I always remember how much people gave to the club.
So you wanted to give back.
So I went back.
Like all of us do.
But that was great too, and some great characters, on the junior teams.
So that kind of segues nicely into you've parked your playing career.
Yeah.
You want to give back, contribute to the club because it's like a family here.
It is a family.
It is a family. There's no question.
Bective is always, and it's a family, who will have quarrels and get on well with each other at times, fight with each other, but it's a family.
But it is a family.
And when the going gets tough, everybody gets behind you. So that's it.
So you became director of rugby. Was that a newly created position? You were director of rugby here in 91 to 94?
Mick Cuddy was there before me.
Okay.
And then I took over. That was around the time Mike Ruddock was
correct,
here.
Yeah.
And then Mike was brought back to Swansea. They wanted him back. and he went back. So yeah, I did that time, and it's interesting reflecting on it. I would probably do it differently, on reflection. But
in what sense?
I think that the club at that stage wasn't prepared for
the AIL and
the
semi-professionalism.
We just hadn't got the structures. So I think before doing a job like that, I think I'd have to see the governance of the club being really watertight, and people understanding the roles and what you do and what you can't do and who you report to. It was in its infancy, if you like. Dennis Whelan was more or less club director.
Correct, yeah.
And he was very good, he was very good, but it just needed to be looked at much more carefully, and I think it is now. That's what I'm delighted to see it is. And but that was great experience. And
so you cut your teeth in
yeah, and then
were you instrumental in the likes of getting Noel McQuilkin in then? Yes, after Mike Ruddock left?
What happened there was we were thinking about coaching, and I had noticed in Northampton when we went over there was a coach there called Glenn Ross.
Yeah, New Zealander.
Yeah.
I was there.
Yeah.
We used to play them under lights on a Friday night up in Franklin's Gardens.
Yeah. So effectively what I did was I got in touch with John Rayfield, because he was back there in Northampton. I explained to him what I was thinking about, that we were looking for somebody. He spoke to Glenn Ross, and Glenn came with a name, Noel McQuilkin. Found out more about Noel, which was all very positive, because Noel was definitely a coach that had done all the badges in New Zealand. He wasn't one. At that time, one of the difficulties at that time was that coaches were appearing from New Zealand with all sorts of CVs, that if you went into them forensically, they were yes, there was a lot of imagination went into them.
LinkedIn is full of that nowadays, Louis. Yes, people who are experts in the fields and disruptors. It's complete lies.
So we definitely knew that Noel was the goods.
Okay.
And he had coached King Country.
Correct.
Which would have been, a tight-knit community down there with the Meads brothers and everything else. So anyway, I asked him to come over, and we got him over. It was March, I think, and met him at the airport, and we got him fixed up and everything else, just to have a kind of a few days here to see. He saw the setup in the club. At that time, the seconds were playing better than the first. The first actually team he saw playing with the seconds, he thought, oh, they're good. And then he saw the first playing the next day, and they were. He said to me, they're not too hot. I said, no, I think you're.
That's why we want
you. You're beginning to see what I'm talking about. So he came here. He always said to me he'd do 3 years. That was and then he did an extra year, which I always felt at the time. I was finishing up as a director because I'd actually finished. And I said to him, are you sure, Noel? And
the message can get lost when it's repeated year after year after year.
And then he went to Greystones for a while, which I don't think worked out. But
no, I was living down there.
He was a very, very good coach.
And he brought Kurt.
He brought Kurt in, and having Kurt here, having a player like that in the middle of the field, you could see from the word go.
He was like a player coach, Kurt.
Yeah, he was. He was very good. But Noel was great. He could be cranky, He was
a gruff New Zealander.
He was, yes. But he came from, that background where when they get into rugby over there, particularly around King Country, it's tough going and you get on with it,
Well, he was a good club man, and Josie as well, so he had
Josie was a lovely lady.
Yeah,
she was a lovely lady, and I know that Susan and herself got on very well, and they... I felt for her because her father died when she was here, and she went back, and that was tough going for them. And tough to actually, leave home and try and come over here
to the other side of the world.
Try and make a few bob, and but I have to say it's interesting just to qualify about Noel McQuilkin. I spoke to Rolly Meats about him, and Rolly said to me, "That man is a very good coach."
And Rowley, of course, was technical.
Bective had played Trinity, and he'd watched what was happening, and he said to me, "That man is a very good coach." So
we got a good one. A good one.
Yeah.
Okay, and also just to finish on the McQuilkins, and I'm kind of still semi in touch on Facebook with Kurt. Noel also fulfilled a lifetime ambition for me. I came in here one day and he called me over and he said, "Meet Pine Tree." Right? And there was Colin Meads, and I was going, oh my. I actually went out and rang my old fellow afterwards, going, "You're never going to guess who I just met." Yeah, Colin Meads.
Huge man, wasn't he?
Huge man. Wider than he was. Like, he wasn't actually tall, but he was just granite, even at that age. So, Bective president then, 97, 98, and then moved on into the political world. You moved into the Leinster branch as president there in 03 and 04.
Yeah, well, I took over. I took over from John Lyons. John Lyons became honorary treasurer of the IRFU. I moved into his position as club rep on the Leinster branch
in 03, 04.
Well, no, before that, and then in
you went out to the executive.
Yeah, in 03, 04, I became president of the branch.
Okay.
And then at the end of my year as president, I went up for election for the IRFU, which I was elected, and that started another pathway, if you like.
Absolutely, it did. You ended up being in, I think it was 2014, 2015, the third Bective president of the union in the past 30 years, and the fifth in total.
Fifth in
No,
total.
I can't remember the other two, but I remember the Cud.
Yeah, Harry Trift.
My favourite story about Michael Cuddy, we were playing an AIL match up in Malone, and the juniors went up. Cuddy's young lad was playing on the under 9s or under 10s before the game. And he was a big kid, you know, in the minis, there's always one kid who looks like he's 15. Well, this is Cuddy's young lad, and he caught the ball on the wing and he ran from inside his own half up the wing with Cud running beside him, roaring him on. And the kid scored in the corner, and Cuddy turned around as sure as God and said, "His name is Cuddy," right, on the top of his voice.
Well, I'd say that's the fastest the Cud ever
ran. Well, the Cud, let's say, jogged or rolled up the touchline. So it was Mick Cuddy, and then it was John Lyons, John Who as he was called here, because everyone has a nickname in Bective, and then yourself. And you were president that great year when we won the Six Nations, both the men's and the ladies.
Yeah, they won the two. And it was a great year. I must say it was a fantastic honour. I was delighted because I always felt it was like the wheel turning. I was able to kind of acknowledge my grandfather. Because, and my granduncles, like my grandfather and my granduncles, my grandfather Louis, my granduncles Joe and Jim, all joined here in the early 1890s. You know, they were really good rugby players. And like Louis, 27 caps, 9 seasons, 9 threes, 27, scrum half, or out half, he'd do both. And then Joe got 2 caps, and then Jim never played rugby for Ireland, but played for the Lions. So with Louis.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and their photograph is in the
trying to think from
South African Museum.
Colin Tucker did that too, didn't he? He got capped for the Lions before he got capped for Ireland.
So, but they were of an age. They were Corinthian sportsmen. They played everything. They were athletes. They played cricket. But with Louis, the more I've read about him, the more I realised that he was a remarkable rugby player and a very intelligent rugby player. An intelligent man, by the way, too. I mean,
what do you mean by an intelligent rugby player?
He, on what I've read, that he began to, if you like, encourage the teams to think tactically.
Because there was no coaches back in those days. Captain was coach.
And he worked a lot around. When they won the Triple Crown, he had done his homework. He had actually, through a friend,